You ever have a shift that feels like it rips something out of you and hands you back a version of yourself you didn't know was living under the skin? A shift where every alarm, every scream, every heartbeat feels louder than it should. Like the entire hospital is holding its breath and waiting for you to either rise or break? Good. Because that was my last Tuesday. And if anyone ever tells you being an ER nurse gets easier, they're either lying to you or they've forgotten what it feels like to still have a soul. So let me tell you about the craziest shift of my life, one that still keeps me awake at night, even though I'm supposed to be the one who knows how to deal with chaos. This isn't a story about medical heroics or perfect decisions. It's a confession about a night where everything went wrong at the same time, and I had no choice but to hold the line. I clocked in at 6:52 p.m., already annoyed because I was 7 minutes early for a shift I knew would drain me dry. The ER was packed. It always is on Tuesdays for reasons no one understands. But that day, the waiting room looked like a concert crowd shoved into a broom closet. People standing, people arguing, people demanding to be seen. Right now, because I have work tomorrow, the usual chorus of impatience mixed with the metallic smell of fear. I scanned triage screen. Respiratory distress, abdominal pain, headache, chest tightness, 2 lacerations, a psych eval pending, and a police custody patient who already punched a wall. Typical circus. The charge nurse, Carla, saw me walking in and didn't waste a second. "Hey, Sunshine," she said. She only calls me Sunshine when she's about to give me the assignments nobody else wants. "You're on rooms 3, 4, and 6. Trauma's yours too if something drops. And we have a code bed open. For now. For now means don't get too comfortable." I threw my bag in my locker, tied up my hair, clipped my badge to my scrubs, and walked into the storm. First patient, chest pain, mid-50s, sweating like he ran a marathon. EKG okay but suspicious, vitals shaky. I did the routine, aspirin, nitro, oxygen, called the physician, drew labs. Nothing dramatic, nothing unpredictable, but he kept staring at me like he was waiting for something. "Please don't let me die," he whispered at one point. People say that all the time, but for some reason it hit different. Maybe because something in his eyes reminded me of my father. Maybe because I had a bad feeling I tried to ignore. Second patient, 22-year-old drunk guy with a cut on his forehead because he tried to climb a fence. For fun, he kept calling me babe and asking for my Snapchat. I threatened to call security twice. He thought it was flirting. He was harmless, annoying, and way too loud. Third patient, elderly woman in respiratory distress, gasping between words, gripping my wrist like she was drowning. She had pneumonia, and her oxygen saturation was dropping fast. I bumped her up on the priority list, increased her O2, calmed her daughter who kept asking if she was dying. It was textbook ER, stressful but manageable. But the nightmare started at exactly 8:17 p.m. The radio crackled overhead. "Trauma incoming. ETA 3 minutes. Motor vehicle collision. Unknown number of patients." And then, a second voice layered right on top of it. "CPR in progress. Pediatric. ETA 4 minutes. 2 traumas. 1 adult, 1 child. Both minutes apart." I swear the air changed in the room. The whole ER froze for a fraction of a second. The kind of moment where everyone looks at everyone else, silently hoping someone older, wiser, or braver takes the lead. Carla yelled out assignments and people scattered. I sprinted toward Trauma 1. My hands were already shaking before the patient even arrived. And I remember thinking, not the kid. Please don't give me the kid. I've handled pediatric codes before. They break a piece of you don't get back. The first ambulance screeched up. A man in his early 40s, unconscious, blood everywhere, steering wheel imprint bruised into his chest. Airbags deployed, but didn't save him from the impact. He was agonal breathing by the time we got him onto the bed. His pupils were sluggish, blood pressure tanking. I jumped right into the routine, cutting clothes, setting lines, calling out vitals, suction ready, airway kit open. Before I could finish, the second ambulance door slammed. The pediatric, a 9-year-old girl, CPR in progress, tiny body, blue lips, little sneakers dangling off the edge of the stretcher. I swear I felt the world tilt. They pushed her into Trauma 2. I heard the paramedic's voice breaking. "Unrestrained passenger, cardiac arrest." Down for about 7 minutes. 7 minutes might as well be eternity. Kids bounce back from a lot, but cardiac arrest, that's a whole different battlefield. I wanted to run into that room. I wanted to help her. But Carla's voice cut through the noise. Stay with your trauma. We've got the kid. I bit my tongue and went back to the man bleeding out in front of me. That's the cruel part of emergency medicine. Your heart wants to run toward the most heartbreaking case, but your duty keeps you anchored to the one already in your hands. He crashed at 8:24 p.m. We lost a pulse, started CPR. His ribs cracked under compressions. Normal, but ugly to hear. We pushed meds, shocked him twice, worked him hard. After 26 minutes, he still had no rhythm compatible with life. Time of death was called. I don't even remember the exact minute because the moment the attending said the words, another scream echoed from Trauma 2. I ran toward the door. For a second, I don't know if it was instinct or desperation, I hoped they'd gotten a pulse back. But the scream wasn't joy. It was the child's mother, who had just arrived in hysterics. Security was trying to hold her back while she begged us to save her baby. I will never forget the sound coming out of that woman's mouth. It was pure animal grief, something primal that claws its way under your skin. Inside the room, compressions were still going. Sweat pouring off everyone. The doctor trying everything. Nurses swapping out every 2 minutes. I hovered in the doorway because they didn't need extra hands. They needed space. And stepping in would have made it worse. Then, at 8:41 p.m., the monitor flatlined. No pulse, no electrical activity, no oxygen reaching her brain for too long. The doctor looked around the room, eyes wet. "We're done," he whispered, voice cracking. And that was it. We stopped. Silence filled the room. Someone turned off the monitor. The paramedic who brought her in leaned against the wall and cried. The mother collapsed when she realized what the silence meant. I stepped outside because I could feel my legs giving out. I leaned against the corridor wall, slid down to the floor, and put my head in my hands. But I didn't get 30 seconds to break down. ER nurses never do. At 8:46 p.m., a psych patient tried to run out the back door and nearly attacked a tech. At 8:49 p.m., the chest pain patient from my first room started having a full STEMI, massive heart attack. His EKG turned into a nightmare of ST elevations. I rushed back in, activated a code STEMI, started prepping him for immediate transport to cath lab. He grabbed my hand again and said the same words, "Please don't let me die." This time it stabbed deeper. At 8:53 p.m., the drunk guy in room 4 threw up all over himself in the floor. At 8:54 p.m., my elderly pneumonia patient dropped her oxygen saturation and started panicking. And at 8:56 p.m., someone from housekeeping asked me to sign a hazard report because of the vomit on the floor, while I was literally holding pressure on a patient's groin after a femoral line had been placed. There are moments where the ER feels like a video game set to maximum difficulty, and no pause button exists. You're juggling life or death calls, while also being expected to smile at visitors who complain about waiting. By 9:30 p.m., I felt drained enough to dissolve into the floor, but the shift wasn't done with me. Around 10:12 p.m., a man walked in holding his own hand. Literally. Holding it. He'd accidentally chopped it off with a lawnmower blade. Blood everywhere. He was calm. Shock will do that. But his wife fainted as soon as she saw us take the hand from him. I set up a sterile field, wrapped the severed hand in moist gauze, and put it on ice. Meanwhile, the patient kept saying, "Do you think they can sew it back?" My wedding ring's still on it. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or throw myself into a wall. We called the on-call surgeon, got the guy stabilized, and started prepping to transfer him to a specialist hospital. He actually cracked jokes about having a bad day at work. ER humor is dark and contagious. At 11:00 p.m., a combative detox patient tried to bite me. Not metaphorically, literally tried to sink his teeth into my forearm. Security had to restrain him. He screamed that he knew his rights while drooling on himself. Beautiful. At 11:22 p.m., my pneumonia patient worsened. I increased her O2, started her on antibiotics, calmed her daughter again, and promised we were doing everything. The daughter hugged me unexpectedly. I hate when that happens. It means people are breaking and clinging to whatever seems solid. At midnight, the chest pain guy finally went up to cath lab. I walked him all the way there, even though transport usually does that. He squeezed my hand before the doors closed. I didn't say it out loud, but I begged the universe not to take this one too. At 12:20 a.m., while charting, I overheard the mother of the little girl talking softly to her daughter's body in trauma 2. I can't tell you what she said, but I heard enough to know I'd never forget her voice. That's the part no one prepares you for. The aftermath. The echo of grief that sticks to your scrubs and follows you home. Around 1:06 a.m., a patient coded in the waiting room. A man collapsed out of nowhere. No warning, no complaints. Just fell. I sprinted, started compressions, yelled for a crash cart. We revived him. He came back swinging, confused, angry, but alive. He ended up thanking me 2 hours later, apologizing for hitting me in panic. I didn't even feel the punch until after the adrenaline wore off. By 3 a.m., the ER finally slowed enough for me to take a breath. Not a break, just a breath. I sat at the nurse's station staring at my hands, noticing small streaks of dried blood I hadn't washed off properly. Sometimes I wonder if that's symbolic or just poor hygiene. I kept thinking about the little girl, her pink sneakers, her tiny hands, the way her mother collapsed, the sound of the monitor flatlining. Nurses don't get to show emotion during the crisis, so it comes later, in small waves, in quiet hallways, in empty cars on the drive home. But then, at 3:47 a.m., the cath lab called. The chest pain guy, he survived. They opened the artery in time. He was stable, awake, asking if he could thank the young nurse with the brown ponytail. I almost cried right then. The universe took a child but gave one human back. ER shifts are like that. Pure chaos balanced against tiny moments of grace. By 5 a.m., the sun wasn't up yet, but the sky had softened. I stood outside for a second before clocking out, breathing the cold morning air, trying to decompress from everything I'd seen. I looked at the hospital entrance, the automatic doors opening and closing for strangers who would walk in with emergencies they didn't plan and pain they couldn't predict. And I realized something I hate admitting. Despite everything, I'd come back tomorrow, because someone has to stand in the chaos. Someone has to hold dying hands, calm terrified families, push meds, stop bleeding, and pray silently that the kid in trauma 2 won't haunt them forever. Someone has to carry these stories, so the people living them don't feel alone. That day changed me. It carved something raw and real into my chest. But it also reminded me why I do this. Not for the glory, not for the paycheck, but for the rare moments. Tiny, fragile, when someone survives because you were there. So if you've made it this far into my confession, thank you for listening to a piece of my life most people never see. ER nurses carry stories like scars, hidden under scrubs but always there, shaping us, softening us, hardening us, reminding us that life can break and heal in the same breath. Thank you for staying until the end of my story. Truly. And if you want more real-life confessions from the ER, more raw, unfiltered stories that show what happens behind those hospital doors, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share this video with someone who loves true stories. Your support means more than you know.